All rise. Thank you. Please be seated. Court will call the matter of State of Wisconsin versus Morgan Geyser, case number 14 CF 596. Appearances.
Good afternoon, Judge Abby Nicole appears on behalf of the state.
Good afternoon, Judge. Morgan Geyser with Attorney Anthony Cotton. She's here in person.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon all. We're here on the review of the court's petition, the order to proceed with conditional release, and then the petition filed to revoke that order. So how is the state calling a witness? Or how should we proceed?
Judge, given today's scheduling was primarily based around the three doctors' schedules, I would suggest that we perhaps start with their testimony, because I know that they were all available today, and I believe they're all on Zoom. And I know that the court had questions for the doctors, so that would be my proposal.
Well, should we introduce the petition, though, of why we're here?
Sure.
We have the petition that seeks to revoke the conditional release.
Right.
Is there a witness here to testify about that?
I have several witnesses on the state's burden, none of which I anticipated including any of the doctors.
All right. Well, I think we should put the petition into the record officially so we can have individuals comment on it. So who is calling to authenticate it?
Well, I have, this afternoon, I plan to elicit testimony from Nicole Whitaker from WCS, who helped author some of the information, as well as Kathleen Martinez from the Department of Health Services. And then there's also a witness on Zoom who is part of the defendant's treatment team from Winnebago, Lisa Portman. I was going to have testimony from all of those individuals in regard to the information that was filed in document 655, the petition to revoke conditional release.
Well, it was signed by the amended petition that they filed most recently. It was signed by Nicole, but by Nicole Whitaker. Is she available?
Yes, she's here, Judge.
Well, we should have her then be the one that introduces it so we have it in the record.
Okay. She did sign that memorandum. The actual petition to revoke the conditional release is signed by Aaron Graff from the Department of Health Services, who's also here. The WCS memo is included underneath that petition as a factual basis. Ms. Graff is also here, as is her supervisor, Ms. Martinez. So however the court would like me to begin, I can do that.
Well, I'll allow you to decide how to begin. I just wanted to get it in to the into the process. I'm just looking for it. I have the statement of probable cause for detention and petition for revocation of conditional release. That was filed in court here on February 27th. And that letter is signed by Nicole Whitaker as well. The reason we're here is they filed a petition.
Right. I did not mark the petition as an exhibit. Because it's already in the court record, and I apologize. Perhaps I should have done that.
Well, we'll use it as Court Exhibit 1.
Okay.
And I guess, should Ms. Whitaker be the witness that comes in?
She will be one of my witnesses, yes.
Well, let's call her and she can identify it so we have something to proceed with.
Sure. I'd call Nicole Whitaker.
Ma'am, if you'd come forward, have a seat behind the court reporter. We have an exhibit tag for that. And then, ma'am, if you'd stand, remain standing, raise your right hand. Do you swear that everything you're going to testify to today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. And then state your full name and spell your last name.
Nicole Whitaker. My last name is Whiteaker.
No, we're missing, excuse me a moment. We're missing sheets. What I've done is I've copied the petition and marked it as Court Exhibit 1.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to give you now what's marked as Court Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
And then I'll turn it over to Attorney Nicole.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Whitaker, where do you work?
I work for Wisconsin Community Services.
And what do you do there?
I am the Conditional Release Program Supervisor.
What does that mean? What are your duties?
I oversee a team of people who are overseeing participants who are released into the community under conditional release.
Did you become involved in preparing a plan for Morgan Geyser in this case?
I did.
And did you begin to prepare that plan in this case?
I did.
Ultimately, did you write a memorandum with some information in it that was filed with the court?
I did.
And you've been handed Court's Exhibit Number 1, is that true?
Yes.
Is that a multi-page document?
Yes.
What's the date of filing on that document, please?
February 27th, 2025.
Okay. And do you recognize that document? What is it?
This is the 5177 petition for revocation.
Is there information in that petition that you generated?
There is.
What information is that?
I generated a portion of this that are numbered, and that comes out of case notes that were done after meetings with Ms. Geyser.
Could you refer the court to a page number where your content begins?
Mine is not numbered, but I'm on the 4th page.
Okay. Is there a WCS logo at the top left corner of that page?
There is.
Okay. On the final page of that exhibit, is your electronic signature there?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you compile the information in this memo?
We, as a treatment team,
I'm going to object to her testifying as a treatment team when she's asked what she was tasked with doing.
Sustained.
Do you want this marked as well? That's number 2.
Sustain the objection. Can we go ahead?
Sure. I want to back up a little bit. Did you meet Morgan Geyser when you were assigned to this case?
I met her previously to being assigned to this case.
Okay, and specifically to planning the conditional release plan, did you meet with a team that was tasked with creating that plan?
I did.
Who was a part of that team?
There are several members of the team that include myself, a case manager, our partners at DHS, and members of the Winnebago Mental Health Institute treatment team.
And when you say DHS, are you talking about the Department of Health Services?
I am.
And would that include Erin Graff?
It would.
For the record, is that GRAF?
Yes.
And is her signature actually also on Exhibit 1 that you were given by the court?
It is.
And what part did she play in this filing, if you know?
She filed the 5177.
And she's an employee with the Department of Health Services, is that true?
She is.
Okay. But was she also a part of the team that was helping to prepare this conditional release plan?
Yes.
Okay. And how many meetings do you think that this group had in regard to the conditional release plan in this case?
Initially, the treatment team meets as a whole in the beginning, when a participant's granted conditional release. And then a smaller group meets with the participant on a weekly basis going forward until she's released.
When the group became smaller, what participants were left in it?
Myself, my case manager, the participant, and sometimes her social worker at Winnebago.
Was the social worker always in those meetings in this case?
Not always.
Why not?
There were times that Morgan had asked her to leave.
Was that social worker someone that was recently brought into Morgan's team?
Yes.
Okay. At some point in time during these planning meetings, did reading material become a topic?
It did.
And why would it be important for you in preparing a conditional release plan to know about a participant's reading material?
In the beginning of preparing a conditional release plan, it's really important for us as a team to build rapport and get to know the participant, coping skills, things of that nature. And the purpose of the conditional release plan is to mitigate risk to the community. When we started looking into things that Ms. Geyser liked to do, reading became a topic. To then we inquired about what types of books and things like that.
Okay. At a point in time, did you become concerned about information you learned about reading material that Ms. Geyser was using?
I did.
Why?
Because it is related to the index offense, I suppose.
In what way?
It's violent.
Specifically, is one of the books that you're referencing called Rent Boy?
Objection leading.
Overruled. It is leading, but we all are familiar with these various documents, and this will move the hearing along, so overruled.
Yes.
And did you have concerns about the fact that Ms. Geyser had read that book?
I did.
Why?
Because it was a dark novel that revolved around murder and the selling of body parts on the black market, along with sexual sadism.
Is that information contained in the material that you put together in Exhibit 1?
It is.
Okay. How did Ms. Geyser react when she was informed the treatment team and conditional release team would be monitoring her reading material?
She was upset.
Did she say why?
She didn't feel it was necessary for the team to oversee things that she used as coping skills and a creative outlet.
Do you consider it an important part of a treatment plan, a conditional release plan, to monitor things like reading material and media usage?
Yes, that's a standard thing that we do as a conditional release team, and it's very individualized to each participant as well as their index offense.
Was that fact relayed to Ms. Geyser?
Yes.
And was she receptive to that?
No, she still thought that it was unnecessary.
Did you talk about monitoring Ms. Geyser's reading material during more than one meeting with her?
We did.
Did her response to that monitoring ever change?
No.
Would it be fair to say she pushed back on that monitoring?
Yes.
Did she ever come around and acknowledge that that would be an appropriate thing for the team to do?
No.
Was that concerning to the conditional release team?
It was.
Why?
Because it shows risk, and the conditional release plan cannot, or the conditional release team, I'm sorry, cannot write a conditional release plan when we aren't aware of the risk to the community.
Was there a point in time when you approached Aaron Graff and Kathleen Martinez with the Department of Health Services about preparing this plan?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Because things were coming to light that the treatment team wasn't aware of, and I needed to pass that on to other people as she's being released into the community. I can't be the only one harboring that information. The team needs to be aware.
How did you know that the treatment team wasn't aware of these things?
Well, initially I brought it to Aaron and Katie, and they then looked deeper into things with Winnebago.
So that discussion and comparing information with Winnebago was not a role that you took on personally?
Correct.
Okay. Are you aware of an individual named Jeffrey Pagels?
I am aware of him, yes.
When you are creating a conditional release plan, is it important for you to know people who a participant is having contact with outside of an institution?
It is.
Why?
There are a number of reasons, risk being the number one. We have to take in the participants' treatment needs, as they're in the community. And so I asked Ms. Geyser, who are the people that she's communicating with on the outside, and that his name came up.
How recently had she had communication with him?
I'm not sure the answer to that. I know that she stated he did send her a letter after she was granted conditional release, and she stated that she ripped it up and threw it away.
So at the point in time when you discussed this individual with Ms. Geyser, did it seem that she wanted contact with him?
No.
Okay. Is there information nonetheless about this person in the memo in Exhibit 1 that you wrote?
Yes.
Why? What is included in here and why?
After the team became aware of him, it was during that meeting that Ms. Geyser asked for a no contact. We further looked into things to find out if there was such a need for a no contact and what was the reason. And we found a number of things on his Facebook that pertained to Ms. Geyser that we were concerned about.
And before I forget, I apologize for jumping topics here, Ms. Whitaker. I want to ask you one more question about the book Rent Boy that we talked about.
Okay.
Were you able to ascertain how Ms. Geyser got the book to read in Winnebago?
I was under the understanding that she had got it from the library, but then it later came out that it was sent to her
How?
via mail from somebody, I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, going back to, you indicated that there were things, did you do research on this individual on the internet, or how did you know these concerning things about this individual JP?
I did not personally do the research. My lead case manager did, as well as the social worker at Winnebago Mental Health.
And what was anything that was found significant to your assessment of Ms. Geyser's risk to the community or herself?
I'm going to object to that. She didn't do any research on Jeffrey Pagel.
Overruled, witness can answer.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Was there any information about this individual JP that was relevant to your assessment of Ms. Geyser's risk to herself or the community?
Yes, but it was also concerning for Miss Geyser. And when we talk about risk to the community, she is included in that assessment, and he had things directly relating to her on his Facebook page, so yes, that was concerning.
What types of things relating to Ms. Geyser was on his social media accounts?
I'm going to object on relevance grounds. And I'm happy to make further argument.
In overrule the objection, I think it's relative and probative to the issues that have been raised by the petition to revoke the conditional release from the standpoint that information the person, Mr. Pagels, may have on his Facebook account could be from any place, but it may also involve information that purportedly may have come from Ms. Geyser. I don't know that, but I wanted to be able to hear that, and that should be part of the record. So I'll overrule the objection.
We found that there were letters and drawings that she had sent him, a postcard, and he was selling them. He was selling the items.
Were you able to see the drawings that he was purporting were from Ms. Geyser?
Yes,
Were they concerning to you?
yes.
Why?
They were very dark in nature. I would describe it as a horror type picture.
Excuse me?
Horror.
All right.
I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
It is a drawing that Morgan has done
Where did you get it?
off of Jeffrey Pagel's Facebook page.
Was that one of the items for sale?
Yes.
How was it being was Ms. Geyser's name linked to that piece of art in the sale information?
It was.
Does that look like a fair and accurate copy of the item that you found for sale in this case?
It does.
I'd move Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objections?
No.
Received.
And Judge, I can either display it digitally or just have the witness hand you the paper copy that.
You can display it digitally.
Ms. Whitaker, is the Exhibit 1 on the screen in front of you the same as the paper copy that I handed you?
It is.
Okay. And remind the court again what this is?
That's a drawing that came off of Jeffrey Pagel's Facebook page. He compiled a number of items that he was selling as, he called it the Slender Man package.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Were you able to ascertain how long Ms. Geyser had been a willful participant in communicating with that individual, JP?
I do not have knowledge on how long the relationship lasted or how long they communicated.
Okay. At a point in time, did you learn any information about JP that was concerning as it related to sexual behavior?
Yes.
And what was that?
In speaking, we were very open about this topic with Ms. Geyser during the meetings, you know, as it's a great risk as she comes into the community, and she was aware, and she recalled that he would get sexual gratification from her index offense, and I believe that there were letters written back and forth.
Is that information something that Ms. Geyser told you during a meeting?
She did tell us that,
Okay.
yes.
Is that, as far as you're aware, is that information something that she had worked on in therapy or with her treatment team to that point?
I was not sure.
Okay. Was that concerning that you didn't know the answer to that?
Yes,
Why?
because it tells me that there's an unknown risk.
When you first, strike that. The Exhibit 1, you testified that the bulk of the information you included is bulleted with numbers, is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So would it be correct that in terms of creating the conditional release plan in this case, one of your first meetings with Ms. Geyser would have been on or about January 17th of this year?
That's correct.
Okay. During that initial meeting, did you learn what Ms. Geyser's preferred pronouns were
I
at
did.
that time?
I did.
How did you learn that information?
At the beginning of the meeting, my greeting or opening statement was, "Hi Ethan, how are you?" And she had responded, "JK, I'm going by Morgan, she, her pronouns."
What was Ms. Geyser's demeanor like when she said JK to you?
Very light, aloof, just very casual.
Why did you greet Ms. Geyser as Ethan?
Because I had previous knowledge that she was now identifying as Ethan using him, her pronouns. He, him pronouns, I'm sorry.
In terms of Exhibit 1, the conclusion section and recommendation section, is that something that you authored?
I did not.
Okay, who authored those pieces, if you know?
Katie Martinez from DHS.
Okay. And in terms of the decision to actually file this material as a petition to revoke conditional release, was that a decision that you made on your own?
It was not.
Was it even your decision at all?
No.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination.
Do we have a hard copy of Exhibit 1?
She has it.
That's the February report. You have Exhibit 1 in front of you, ma'am?
I do.
Yeah, yes, she does.
Okay, can I go?
Sure.
Can I see that, please?
Sure.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This report that you just testified to is dated, what date?
February 27th, 2025.
Can I mark Exhibit 2 here on this date?
Now, are you marking the one that came in on March 4th?
Yes.
I have it already marked as Exhibit 2.
Perfect, can I use that?
Sure.
So what you just testified to is an exhibit from February 27th. I'm showing you Exhibit 2. What's the date on that report?
March 4th, 2025.
The reason there was a second report is because the first report that you authored contained inaccuracies, correct?
Correct.
In other words, you made mistakes.
Not me. It was Winnebago had not given accurate information to DHS.
So inaccurate information was provided to DHS from Winnebago.
Yes.
Then DHS provided that inaccurate information to the court.
Through the filing, yes, that's why we amended.
Okay, well, we're going to make sure we have accurate information today, okay?
Perfect.
So the March 4th report, Exhibit 2, in front of you has certain things that are crossed out, right?
It does.
And just so I'm clear, ma'am, I only want to ask you questions about things you have personal knowledge of that you did. I don't want to get into what other people did, okay?
I just want to note for the record that Exhibits 1 and 2 are actually Court Exhibit 1, Court Exhibit 2. You may continue.
Yes. So just so we're clear, when things are crossed out in Exhibit 2, it's because that was inaccurate information and you're trying to correct it for the record, right?
Yes, but I did not make those corrections.
Okay, so points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, are those, did you type those line items?
I did,
But in terms of making the corrections, some other person did that.
right.
Okay, so as I understand it, your job is, well, I don't know that we got into this. What is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice.
Okay? What else?
As far as my education, I have ongoing mental health education through, employment. I've been working in the mental health field over 17 years.
Okay, so you have a bachelor's degree.
I do.
You are not a doctor,
I am not.
not a psychologist,
Nope.
not a psychiatrist.
No,
You're not holding yourself out that way at all, I'm assuming, right?
absolutely not.
Okay. You would agree that, strike that. You are in charge of you are a WCS conditional release supervisor, right?
Yes,
And so would I be on solid footing if I said that part of your job is to manage the team that will oversee the conditional release?
yes.
For Morgan specifically, as part of this process, did you yourself ever speak to any of the 3 doctors who did the reports in this case?
I had not.
Okay, you've never called Dr. Lundbaum,
No,
you've never called Dr. Collins,
no,
and you've never called Dr. Robbins.
no.
Have you, as you sit here today, have you even read their reports?
Yes.
Okay, which ones?
I don't have the dates memorized. There were a number of reports. I can't give you specifics.
Okay, well, there are 3, you are aware that there are 3 doctors who have authored reports that have gone to the court in support of Ms. Geyser's release.
Yes.
And it's your testimony that you have read, you're not sure if you've read all of them or you have read all of them.
No, I had at one time. I have not read them recently.
Okay, well, I wasn't asking about dates, but you're sure you read all 3 reports, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you read those reports before you authored or before you put together the petition to revoke Ms. Geyser's release?
I didn't put together the petition to revoke.
Or before you typed the WCS letter?
Can you rephrase the question, or can you restate the question? I'm sorry.
Did you read those 3 doctor reports before you put together the letter that
Yes.
you authored?
Yes.
Okay. So as I understand it, you've met with Ms. Geyser on a few occasions. How many times?
I'm not sure the number of times off the top of my head.
Okay, is it more than 5 or less than 5?
More than 5.
So you drive up to Winnebago and do meetings there at Winnebago.
We do Zoom meetings.
Have you ever met her in person?
I have.
How many times?
About 5, maybe?
So you've done Zoom meetings and you've also driven up to Winnebago to meet her in person, right?
I have, but that was different conditions, yes.
What does that mean, different conditions?
We do what's called community success groups, that we go up to Winnebago and do education. So that's when, I've met Ms. Geyser.
Okay, so you're talking before
Yes.
before conditional release was
Yes.
granted. So since conditional release was granted, were those meetings those were Zoom meetings then?
Yes.
Okay, but the other occasions in the past, you've met her face to face?
Yes.
And to be clear, I think the last question Ms. Nicole asked you was about the petition to revoke. That's not your doing, the petition to revoke.
Correct.
What you've authored is a WCS letter that's attached to that to provide information for the court, as I understand it.
A portion of the letter.
Not even the whole thing.
Right.
Now, you said that it's important to build rapport with a person who's going to be released, right?
Absolutely.
And because you're going to be involved in Ms. Geyser's life going forward on a practical level. If she's released, you're going to be involved in her life, right?
Yes, her case manager would be more so, but yes.
But just so it's clear, WCS as an agency provides support in the community for people who are on conditional release, right?
It does.
So rapport is sort of a two-way street. It's important for you to have a positive rapport towards her and her to have a positive rapport towards you.
Yes,
And you're aware, I mean, you've been to Winnebago before, so you're aware of what the facility is like, right?
Is that a yes or a no?
yes,
Thank you.
It is a secure facility, if you will, is it not?
yes,
And I know we call it a mental health institute, but there's security and guards and rules at an institution like that, aren't there?
yes,
And in order for somebody to get a visit at Winnebago, whoever's in Winnebago, they're just sort of there, and another person in the community can request to come visit that person. Is that how it works?
I do not know.
What you do know is that Morgan had some visits with a person named Jeffrey Pagel, because you've testified about his name today, right?
Yes,
And if I go to Exhibit 2, if you have Exhibit 2, I want to draw your attention to paragraph 7, which is your note from February 19th. Did you author that?
I did.
And again, this is information that you had supplied to the court because it's being given to you by Winnebago, right?
I'm sorry. Can I correct something?
Sure.
That number 7 was authored by my lead case manager.
So some of the numbers in here are things that you wrote and some aren't?
Right, they come from case notes. That is a collaborative effort.
So, in other words, you put your name on a document that you've not entirely authored because it's a team approach.
Yes,
Okay. And on item 7, it's indicated that Jeffrey Pagel had visits with, well, I guess they used the initials JP. That's who we're talking about, right? Pagel?
yes,
Had visits with MG, that's Morgan Geyser, right?
yes,
At Winnebago 3 times.
yes,
Initially, it was reported that it was 4 visits, but in fact, it's only 3.
correct.
And every one of those visits that took place with Mr. Pagel was at Winnebago.
Yes,
There is no suggestion that Ms. Geyser ever met him in the community.
I'm not aware.
You're not aware of any of her outings that she secretly had contact with Jeff Pagel, right?
Correct.
There's no suggestion at all of that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And the 3 times that Ms. Geyser saw Pagel was inside, as you understand it, was inside Winnebago's secure facility.
To my knowledge,
So Pagel went through whatever process he would have gone through to get permission to go into the facility to see Ms. Geyser.
I suppose.
And those visits spanned 3 visits over the course of 10 days. That's the extent, isn't it?
From the records they provided us, yes.
June 3rd, June 8th, June 13th
Yes,
of 2023.
yes,
So Winnebago supplied you with those records, right?
they did.
So Jeffrey Pagel's name was known to Winnebago in June of 2023.
It was.
In fact, they were aware of the visits because that's the institution that provided you with the records, right?
Correct.
And initially it was reported that Pagel visited her on June 30th, but then that's crossed out because that actually never happened, right?
That's what I'm told.
And in fact, it was Miss Geyser that there was a visit scheduled on June 30th with this Pagel person, and it was Miss Geyser that canceled the visit, right?
I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, but that's what I'm told.
Your report that you supplied to the court says Miss Geyser rescinded permission. That's the language you supplied to the court.
Yes,
So your understanding is that it was Miss Geyser who rescinded the ability of Pagel to visit her further.
yes,
And there's been no further visits that you're aware of from Jeffrey Pagel.
correct.
And there's been no contact with him in the community that you're aware of.
Not aware of any.
And as part of the release planning process, when you talk to Miss Geyser about people she's had contact with, she brought up Pagel as a person. It was her that brought that name to your attention, right?
Correct.
It wasn't like she was hiding something and you found some notes or something in her room. She told you about Pagel.
She did.
And she asked, didn't she, to have a no contact with Pagel?
She did.
Because she still, as of the time you were meeting with her in January, was expressing a desire not to have contact with him.
Correct.
I want to ask you something totally unrelated to Morgan, because I think it's important. you've been doing this for 17 years in the mental health field, right?
Yes,
And we don't need to get into the details of other people's cases, but you are aware that Ms. Geyser's case, if you will, is of a high-profile nature, right?
yes,
We all sort of know about it because whether you've been involved in it or not, people have heard of the Slender Man case and people are just generally aware of that.
correct.
And the reason why that's important is because as part of Morgan's release planning, that's an additional variable that exists in her case that doesn't exist in everybody else's cases.
Correct.
And so thinking about that variable and talking with her about how to sort of constructively handle that is important.
Yes,
Pagel is sort of, feel free to disagree with me if you want, but Pagel is sort of a classic example of somebody who appears to be fixated, if you will, on the Slender Man case, or Morgan specifically, right?
it appears he's fixated on true crime as a whole.
When you looked at his Facebook page.
Yes,
Because you didn't talk to him, I'm sure, right?
absolutely not.
So do you know that he's a former, has a law enforcement background?
I do not.
Did you know that he used to be in the correction, work in the correctional system?
I do not.
You know nothing about Pagel,
Nothing.
other than what you see on Facebook.
That's correct.
And he appears to be somebody who's fixated on, what'd you say, true crime and things like that?
Yes,
And he's the one who's selling things on the internet that he purports are from Ms. Geyser.
yes,
And you don't know, there's two things that are unclear from when you look at Pagel's Facebook page. One is whether the things he says Ms. Geyser sent him were even sent by Ms. Geyser, right?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
When Pagel puts something on Facebook and says, here's the Slender Man letter,
Sure.
do we know as a treatment team that Ms. Geyser even wrote that letter?
No, that was why we were looking into things.
Right, because any person on the internet could claim that I got this from Morgan or I got this from whoever, right? So you don't really know that the things he's saying he got from Morgan even came from Morgan, right?
She had told me that she had sent him things and she was aware that he was selling them, so we did know.
Okay. So Morgan was willing, was just discussing with you the fact that she had a letter communications and had sent him some drawings, right?
Yes, we asked her about it and she was aware.
Okay. Is there any suggestion that Morgan was trying to profit from her crime in any way?
That's unknown.
Okay. In other words, no. There's no evidence that Morgan was
Correct.
doing that, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And, because there's lots of things that are unknown, I just want to focus on what we do know. What we
Okay.
do know is that Pagel is posting things for sale on the internet.
Yes,
And Pagel is apparently fixated on true crime type things.
yes,
But Morgan herself hasn't had any physical contact with Pagel in over 18 months.
not that I'm aware.
And has never seen him in the community as far as we know. Right?
Correct.
And has herself asked for a no contact order.
Yes,
And as part of a treatment release, when you're planning someone's release, a person gets rules, right? It's sort of like being on probation. They have a list of rules that they have to abide by.
correct.
And certainly on those rules, oftentimes there will be no contacts with certain individuals.
Yes,
I mean, one obvious no contact would be the victim of the crime and the family members, right?
yep,
And then, so it seems like Ms. Geyser is aware of that. So when she uses the phrase no contact, it's in the context of, I'd like there to be a rule that makes it clear not to have contact, right?
correct.
And in terms of making sure that somebody knows how to, well, let's go back to sort of the nature of the crime. There will be people who probably try to reach out to Morgan if they know where she is or they know how to get a hold of her because they might be obsessed with Slender Man case, right?
That's been the history.
But actually what's gonna happen, as I understand it, is judge had ordered conditional release, and so you as part of the planning group, you were gonna put together a plan for her to go to a group home, was the idea.
Correct.
And as I understand it, there were 2 group homes that were identified, but one was too expensive and one was affordable, right?
Yes, well, yes,
Two group homes that would take her, right?
yes,
And so the one that you had identified would be a location that would be confidential in a way, wouldn't it?
we were going to try to make it confidential.
Okay, I just want to explore that. I mean, the idea was even Morgan shouldn't reveal her own location to start with,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So and it may not be, we're not saying forever, but to begin, don't even let your mother or anybody know the exact location, right?
Correct.
Because what I think we're trying to do is make sure when she's released, that these Pagel type people don't flock to a group home or start writing letters to her as she's transitioning into the community, right?
Correct.
And so in a way, as she sits here right now, anybody can write a letter to Winnebago where she is, and either Winnebago gives it to her or they don't, right?
That a yes or no?
Yes, I'm sorry.
But when she goes to the group home, the idea, your guys' idea, or the team's idea was keep the location confidential as much as possible so we can help transition Morgan into the community safely.
Correct.
And that can be hard for her to process in a way because it's almost more restrictive in a sense than Winnebago is, isn't it?
Yes.
I know she's worked hard. You would agree she's worked hard to earn her release from Winnebago, right?
Yes.
And so she has release privileges where she can go into the community in a supervised fashion and have visits from family members and friends, right?
She does.
But that's going to change when she goes to a group home. She's actually going to be more restricted to start with.
Initially, yes.
And Morgan specifically and people in general, that can be a hard thing to have to work through, the fact that they're going from having some privileges to now having almost more restriction, even though they're not in an institution.
Yes.
So things like crying and let's talk about the books. Did you ask Morgan to put together a list for you of all the books she's read? Let's pick the last year. Did you say, Morgan, give me a list of all the books you've read in the last year?
No.
You do know that she read Rent Boy, obviously, because you mentioned it, right? But the reason we know that is because Morgan brought it up as part of the release planning.
Yes.
And that's important because it's not like you found it hidden somewhere in her, it's not like Winnebago found it hidden somewhere, right?
We asked her to provide us with a list of books that she would like to read, and she had brought up that she was reading Rent Boy. She stated that she didn't want to tell the conditional release team the kind of book she was reading because she was afraid that we wouldn't allow them because they were kind of dark, I think was the way she described it.
Did you ask, so you were asking sort of prospectively, can we have a list of books that you are planning to read as you are released?
Yeah, what are you interested in reading?
Okay, but you never asked her for a list of books she's actually read, right?
No.
And in something like Rent Boy, there's no evidence that she sought it out. It appears that somebody mailed it to her at the institution, as you understand it, right?
I don't know if she sought it out or not.
Well, but you said before, you believe someone mailed it to her.
That's what I'm told, yes.
Okay, so all we know is that someone mailed her this book and she read it, right?
I suppose that's what I'm told.
Yeah, we're told that someone mailed her the book.
Yes.
She read the book, and then she disclosed to you or the team that she had read the book.
Yes.
Okay. And so isn't honesty an important part of one's release plan?
It is.
Morgan should be commended. Morgan should be commended for not concealing the fact that she was reading a book that has some dark themes to it. Agree?
I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor, so I don't, from the clinical standpoint, that's not my role.
Okay, so you defer that question to the doctors who can testify about whether that's a problem.
Yes.
But it gets presented to the court and disrupts her release plan potentially because it's being represented as a problem, but you've never talked once to the doctors about it.
Correct.
Okay, and you could have, before you filed this letter from WCS that now seeks to revoke her release, you could have called any of these doctors before you filed this letter and asked them, hey, we learned that she read Rent Boy. What's your opinion? Is that a problem?
Objection, she didn't file the letter.
Okay, before you authored the letter. You could have called any of these doctors and asked them, is this a problem?
DHS contacted the treatment team at Winnebago to look further into it. So that's what they were doing.
Okay, and so the answer is you didn't do that, right?
Did I contact the doctors? No.
Now, since you read Dr. Lundbaum's, I want to ask you about Dr. Lundbaum's report. You know you've read the 3 doctor reports, right?
Yes.
And Therefore, you are aware of the fact that even back when Dr. Lundbaum authored her report in December, that it was known to the doctor, it was known to Dr. Lundbaum at least, that there are drawings, letters, and other items being sold on the internet purported to be drawn by Ms. Geyser. You were aware of that, right?
Yes,
So it's not anything new. Dr. Lundbaum knew that when she wrote the report.
yes,
And in fact, when Ms. Geyser was questioned about it, she acknowledged that she had done that, right?
yes,
Okay. And this Jeffrey Pagel person, are you also aware of the fact that Jeffrey Pagel was a known person to Dr. Lundbaum as well?
I recall that she had knowledge of him, yes.
In that Ms. Geyser had talked about how the fact that she learned on her own that this Pagel person that her letters or drawings that she had sent to him, that he was involved in trying to sell these things, she brought it to the doctor's attention back in June of 2024.
I don't recall what's stated in the report.
Now, the reason these reports are important is because when a person is released on conditional release, these reports become part of the treatment process, don't they?
They do.
And you've read the reports, but I just want to be clear, you never reached out to these doctors to discuss any of your concerns about the book or Jeffrey Pagel, right?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
So, with respect to the art that Ms. Geyser does, were you aware of the fact that Ms. Geyser has discussed her trauma therapy and the therapeutic benefit from her artwork, and the fact that a lot of it is disturbing but helps me cope with the trauma I've been through? Are you aware of that?
That's not my role.
Okay, but we're using her artwork here, this picture that you testified to. What's the point of providing this to the court? What is the intention behind giving this to the state?
What is the intention behind giving it to the state?
Yes.
Because it raises a concern for risk.
But you never took this picture that you've now given to the state and asked Dr. Lundbaum, does this change her risk?
That's not my role.
Okay, whose role is that?
That would be the doctors that are treating her.
That would be the Winnebago doctor's role.
Winnebago, yes.
So you become aware of a drawing, and you then mention it in a revocation letter that is supplied to the court. But you were also aware of the fact that Ms. Geyser has been drawing disturbing things for a long time. And Dr. Lundbaum was aware of that when she suggested that Morgan was appropriate to be released, aren't you?
That's the report.
This is not new. Her doing a disturbing drawing is not a new fact at all. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. So we'll put that to the side. And nor is Jeffrey Pagel a new thing at all. He was known 2 years ago in June of 2023 when he was going to the institution.
To Dr. Lundbaum, yes.
Well, actually,
And
to
it
the
was
whole,
in her report.
right, and to the whole institution, because the records at Winnebago reflect the fact that he was a known visitor to their facility.
Yes.
And the records never showed anything inappropriate between Ms. Geyser and Mr. Pagel during any of those visits.
I'm
I'm
unaware.
gonna object on foundation of this witness to testify about all of Winnebago's records.
Overruled. Witness can answer if she can. If she doesn't know, she can say she doesn't know.
I do not know.
So in addition to this one book, Rent Boy, did you ask Ms. Geyser about the other types of literature that she's interested in?
Yes.
You know that she's interested in biographies, right?
Yes.
And you know that she likes historical books, if you will. I might have said Westerns previously. She doesn't like Westerns, but historical books, right?
I am not aware.
But she's talked about her like of Vincent van Gogh, for example, and reading biographies about him, right?
Okay, yes.
And in at Winnebago, there's not she doesn't have internet access at Winnebago, right?
I'm not sure what she has access to at Winnebago.
But when you've met with her and talked to her about her hobbies, a central hobby for her is reading, right?
Yes.
It's really been, for the 11 years that she's been in custody, it's really been a crutch for her and something that she's relied on, isn't it?
I know that it's something she's interested in.
And so what Morgan has, and Morgan has an interest in a wide array of reading material. You're aware of that, right?
I'm not aware of a wide array. I know of the horror books that she's described. Some, she mentioned fantasy and the biographies.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
All right, thank you. Redirect.
Ms. Whitaker, why did you think it was important to share this information with the Department of Health Services?
It raised risk, and we needed to be aware that the treatment team was aware of these risks and that they were being addressed in treatment with Ms. Geyser.
When you say treatment team, what are you talking about?
I'm referring to the doctors and therapists at Winnebago.
Why, if you're if Ms. Geyser is getting out into the community anyway, why does it matter what is being addressed with the treatment team at Winnebago?
We take that as a foundation as we go into the community and know how to treat her into the community to mitigate risks. It's a much different, what is allowed in a confined setting is much different than what can be allowed in the community.
Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any further cross based upon the redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You could put the exhibits just up on the counter here. That would be fine. Thank you. You can step down. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Judge, at this time, I would like to call Kathleen Martinez to offer testimony on Courts Exhibits 1 and 2 as well.
All right, very good, Ms. Martinez, if you'd come forward.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
All right, thank you. Be seated. Pull up to the microphone. It's the bar with the red light. State your full name and spell your last name.
Kathleen Martinez, Martinez.
Is Kathleen with a C or a K?
K.
K, all right.
Ms. Martinez, where do you work?
Wisconsin Department of Health Services,
What's your role there?
Forensic Mental Health Section Manager.
Where's your office?
My office is 1 West Wilson in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay. Do you work with someone named Aaron Graff, Graf?
I do. I supervise Aaron.
Okay. Were you involved in the filing that's been discussed at today's hearing regarding the petition to revoke conditional release for Morgan Geyser?
Yes.
Okay. I believe in front of you are Courts Exhibits 1 and 2. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recognize both of those items?
Yes.
Looking at Courts Exhibit 2, and just to clarify for the record, were you just in the courtroom during the testimony that was offered by Ms. Whitaker?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know Ms. Whitaker?
Yes.
Okay. Are there portions of Exhibit 2 that you authored as well?
Yes.
Could you please clarify for the court which portions you authored?
The conclusion portion of the letter, page 5, partial part of page 6. DHS reviewing these documents is standard practice for conditional releases, and we often make edits or final approval before filing these documents.
Okay, so how does WCS relate to DHS when we're talking about someone that's been granted conditional release?
DHS contracts with WCS to provide conditional release case management to any conditional release person in certain counties in Wisconsin,
Okay.
including the southeastern part of the state.
Okay. Does that mean that the person would only work with a WCS case manager and no one from DHS?
Upon release,
Right. Or would they have both?
DHS also contracts with Department of Corrections to provide supervision. So the individuals that are conditional release work with their WCS or the contracted case manager, the contracted DOC agent, and any other treatment providers or service providers that are indicated in the plan.
Okay. In terms of, in terms of preparing a conditional release plan, is DHS involved in that?
We review it when it's complete.
Okay. Were you involved in any of the meetings that occurred in regard to the plan for Ms. Geyser?
No.
Okay. At some point in time, did you become involved in the planning for Ms. Geyser?
Yes.
Why?
I received pictures of Facebook posts that were concerning. I received them from Erin Graff that she received from WCS.
Okay. And are those some of the things that have been discussed during Ms. Whitaker's testimony and are detailed in Exhibit 2?
Yes.
Okay. Ultimately, were you able to review the information compiled by Ms. Whitaker in Exhibit 2?
Yes.
When you learned that information, what did you do?
I alerted the department administration because it is a practice to complete high-profile notifications if we believe that there may be attention or media drawn to a specific case, and that's what I did.
Okay. Did you have contact with Winnebago Mental Health Institute about some of these issues that were raised, or risk issues that were raised?
Yes, I did.
Why?
To ask them about their perspective from their, from their end.
When you approve a conditional release plan, is it important for DHS to have an understanding of what is in place with the current treatment team at the facility the person is in?
It is.
Why?
Because if somebody is making progress in treatment, we would like to continue it in the community. And when we write conditional release treatment plans, those plans should be informed by the assessed needs and risks that are done by various people in the current treatment team.
Now, would doctors who are court-appointed to make evaluations about appropriateness for conditional release be the same as doctors that are in someone's treatment team in a facility?
No.
What's the difference?
The court-appointed doctors are independent examiners, not affiliated with DHS, and meet with conditional released clients or prospective conditional release clients for purposes of offering an opinion about whether the conditional release poses a threat to the individual or community or property. People at the institution treatment team would be people that interact with an individual at whatever frequency they determine is needed to address treatment concerns.
Did you try to ascertain whether information was known to the Winnebago treatment team regarding Ms. Geyser in this case?
Yes.
What specific information were you trying to learn, whether they were aware of?
Had they seen the posts that I had received from around Jeffrey Pagel, including the contents of the postcard and the specific drawing? And if they knew the extent of the content of the current book, Rent Boy.
Why did you want to know that?
Because I would be interested in incorporating their opinion about what interventions would be needed to address any risk associated with those items, or perhaps they might say that they were aware and that they had no concern with it. And, you know, so since they're treating her, I was interested in understanding more about that.
Ultimately, was a decision made to file a request to this court to revoke the conditional release as opposed to finalizing and offering a plan?
Yes.
What entity's decision was that?
Department of Health Services.
Okay. And why? Why is that the position of the Department of Health Services?
Because when we asked if the treatment team were aware of the extent of these issues and the content, they said the Winnebago social worker.
I'm going to jump on hearsay grounds.
No, I'll overrule it. I'm satisfied. To some extent, it's offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but it's also offered to it's offered to show what, after receiving the information, what the witness in the department did. So I'll overrule the objection. Witness can answer.
I can answer.
Yes.
The social worker indicated that she had not told the treatment team that the specific details of the posts and the specific details of the drawing and the specific content of the current book, Rent Boy. That was in a meeting with Aaron Graff, Nicole Whitaker, and the WCS case manager were that. So to answer your question, so because the treatment team had no knowledge of these, they could not indicate whether they thought it posed a risk or they thought it was great or whatever. They couldn't answer that question because they didn't know about it.
Were there aspects of these concerns that had direct relation to the index offense that caused the department concern?
Yes.
Like what?
The material being horror related is similar to the content of the Slender Man content, and that was similar enough. The material being related to killing people and violence was similar enough to ask a question about risk.
Did the department have concerns about Ms. Geyser's self-reporting tendency to disassociate when stressed?
Yes.
What was that concern?
That in a report by Dr. Lumbaum, there was indication that Ms. Geyser was aware that she sometimes disassociates, and that was what was happening during the index offense when her environment is stressful. And releasing to the community is often includes elevated stress for the individual. And so we were interested in knowing what her treatment team thought about that in relation to her current reading material.
Was the decision to request revocation made before you checked in with her Winnebago treatment team?
No. But we would have liked more time to get more information. That's part of the problem, is that we didn't have the information we needed, and our job is to write a plan that mitigates risk to the community. It's hard to do that if the risk is unknown.
Is the information contained in Exhibit 2 that you authored still true and accurate as you sit here today, as far as you're aware?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay. And is the position of the department continue to be that the court revoke conditional release at this time?
At this time, yes.
And you're aware that one way the department can seek revocation is when rules are violated, right?
That's correct.
Does that apply here?
No.
Why not?
Ms. Geyser did not violate any rules of conditional release.
Right. So then why
I'm
is
aware.
why is the department seeking revocation at this point then?
It's based on concerns about safety to the community and to Ms. Geyser.
You were in court when State's Exhibit 1 was offered, the drawing, is that true?
Yes.
Is that something that you had seen before?
Yes.
Is that something that you inquired with the Winnebago treatment team prior to filing the request to revoke?
We asked, had they received or aware of any of the posts that were done on Facebook, and they said that the Winnebago social worker indicated that the treatment team was not aware.
What about in terms of, was the treatment team aware or worked with Ms. Geyser on, her tendencies to enjoy violent artwork or something like that? Was that something that was known and aware?
I believe that it was, but I don't know that for sure. But I think so, based on the reports submitted by the independent examiners. And so, yes, I
Okay.
think so.
So what aspect about the posting was concerning to the department and unaware to the treatment team?
They indicated they weren't aware of any visits. They weren't aware of the fact that he'd indicated sexual arousal based on the index offense. They were aware of the general themes, but not the details of the specific posts or drawings or the particular book.
From what you were able to review, did it appear that there was well, strike that. How do you know that this person, JP, was sexually aroused by the index offense?
I don't know that he was, but Morgan, the Wisconsin, the WCS conditional release team reported that Ms. Geyser told them that he was, and that was why she asked, part of why she asked for the no contact.
And at that point in time, she hadn't had contact with him since June of 2024, right?
It says 2023 in the records. Exhibit 2, paragraph 7.
That was the, June of 2023 is the last reported visit. I have no idea when the last contact they had was.
Okay. But from what you were able to gather, her treatment team, she never told her treatment team, hey, I'm writing letters to this person who's sexually aroused that I committed this crime 14 years ago.
Not that level of detail, but I believe they knew about him, you know, they knew his name. I asked if this was, that specifically, the sexual piece has been addressed at all in treatment, and I was told that they weren't aware of it, so.
Are there any other risk concerns that the department has that you think that the court needs to know about?
I'm going to object on notice. I'm going to object on notice grounds. If they file a petition to revoke, they can identify the grounds, which they've done, so that we have notice and can investigate and respond.
Overruled, if the witness has additional information for the benefit of the public and the court, the witness can disclose that.
I would just say that generally the conditional release program places people in the safest environment possible. However, and we have the ability to write rules for people to follow, but obviously those rules are broken, and group homes are not locked. People can leave group homes. People can cut off GPS bracelets. So we try to make the best placement possible, the safest placement possible, and we understand that we have rules, and those aren't necessarily safeguards, but I wouldn't, I guess that's just more general information about conditional release generally, not Ms. Geyser specifically.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You and I have talked one time before, haven't we?
Yes.
I think you were on a Zoom conference that we had about a week
Yes.
or so ago, right? Right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So I just want to ask you some questions about what you testified to.
Sure.
It doesn't sound like there was any additional concerns that you had beyond what was expressed in your filing. Do I have that correct?
Yes, I think so. Yep.
Okay. And we all know rules can be broken. You mentioned people, I think you just said people could choose to, a person could cut off their GPS bracelet, right?
Correct.
Person could theoretically leave a group home if they wanted to get out somehow, right?
Yes.
And there's mechanisms in place that when people break rules, there's mechanisms in place to address that, right?
Like, for example, pursuing revocation, or do
Sure.
you mean something?
Yeah, a person could be arrested, right?
Yes, if they were, if we could find them,
Yeah.
they could be arrested, or we could put them in, we could petition the court to, or ask the DOC to place essentially a hold on them if they were willing to come in and
Right.
go to jail or something like that.
Yep. So.
We could also adjust treatment if we needed to.
Sure. And so as we sit here today, Morgan has broken 0 rules, right?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Well, I only want to know what you know, so
Yeah,
she's
yep.
broken no rules.
Yes,
All right. So she's not facing revocation because she broke any rules.
correct.
She's now, in fact, you've never even given the judge the conditional release plan for her to go to the group home, right? You pursued
Correct.
revocation first.
Correct.
Okay. And you said think I have your words correctly, the sexual piece wasn't addressed in treatment. Are those your words?
Yes,
Morgan has never expressed any sexual interest in her crime.
when I said sexual piece, I'm referring to the current reading material of being sexual sadism, plus her interactions with him around being interested, sexually gratified or aroused by her crime, exploring that in therapy to see whether or not that presents a risk to the community. That's what I meant.
Okay, what I heard you say before was that Morgan broke off contact with Pagel when she found out that he was sexually interested in her crime. That's what I heard you say 5 minutes ago. Right?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Morgan,
She rescinded his ability to visit her in person.
right, which is what you would want a person to do in her shoes.
Absolutely.
She finds out that the guy is creepy, he has sexual interest in her crime, she cuts off contact.
Revocation is not about punishment or
I'm
saying.
not asking about.
I mean, so.
First, ma'am.
Sure.
I just want to ask you very specific questions.
Okay, sorry.
What you want someone in Morgan's shoes to do is if someone reaches out to her and starts expressing sexual interest in her crime, you want her to cut off contact with that person.
Yes,
That is what she did. Correct?
correct.
In June of 2023. Right?
June of 2024.
No, June of 2023.
She rescinded the release on June of 2024.
Right, but the last time she had contact with him at the institution was June of 2023.
It was 24 that I rescinded it for
Right.
that reason. For that reason in June 24.
Oh, she became aware of it in June of 2024 and then rescinded the contact, right?
I don't know that.
Okay, all we know is that she rescinded it in June of 2024, right?
Correct.
But we know for sure that the last time she had any contact with him in the facility was June of 2023, right?
The last visit he came to Winnebago was in June of 2023.
Okay. Now, have you ever yourself met with Morgan?
No,
Okay. And you are what is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in social work.
Okay, so you're a LCSW.
APSW, Advanced Practice Social Worker.
So you're a social worker by training, right?
Yes,
And you talked before about Dr. Lundbaum's report, so I'm assuming you yourself have read the doctor reports that were filed about Ms. Geyser, right?
correct.
Because that's an important part of your job, is to read those reports and know what the doctors are aware of, right?
It's not part of my job, but I did in this case.
Okay, why'd you do it in this case?
In order to understand the situation better.
Because of the high-profile nature of it?
No, because of the concern brought to me by the team.
Okay, so with respect to Ms. Geyser's artwork, you're aware of the fact, aren't you, that Dr. Lundbaum that Winnebago itself was aware that Morgan has, part of her therapy is her artwork. You know that, right?
Yes,
In that it's been a method that they've used to help her cope with her trauma, right?
yes,
In that, in fact, it's been known for quite some time, it was known even to Dr. Lundbaum, that the artwork is disturbing. That's not new information.
no,
And Dr. Lundbaum, despite that, and knowing that,
Well, that was a double negative.
okay, then let me be precise with it. I think I should ask the question. You know that Ms. Geyser has drawn artwork of a disturbing nature in the past, right? You know that?
I read that, yes,
Okay, you read that in Dr. Lundbaum's report?
yes.
Okay. Now, with respect to the book, Rent Boy, are you aware of how Ms. Geyser got that book?
I was told that it was mailed to her,
Is that all you know?
yes,
Okay, someone mailed it to her.
yes,
And the reason you know about it is because she said that she read it, right?
yes.
She brought it up. It wasn't like it was discovered. Right?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Ms. Geyser stated she just finished a book titled Rent Boy by Gary, Indiana, which she stated was about prostitution and black market organ trading. Are you aware of that sentence in the WCS report?
Yes,
Okay, so Ms. Geyser was the one who disclosed that she read the book.
yes,
Don't we want, as part of DHS, don't you want honesty?
yes.
So it would be a concern if somebody wasn't honest about reading a book like that, but
Yes.
it's also a concern when they are honest about it.
If the concern was that upon further investigation and looking into the themes of the book, when they asked her about it, her response was, "Oh, I forgot that part," which is also indicated in the memo.
She stated that it was darker and disturbing, right?
I mean, I wasn't in that meeting.
Okay. And really, you don't have any personal familiarity with Ms. Geyser as an individual because you've never met her, right?
Correct.
And when you talked before about the sexual piece that wasn't addressed in treatment, what we're talking about is Jeffrey Pagel, whoever that is, his sexual interest in whatever, right?
And sexual sadism, the combination of that.
That he's interested in sexual sadism and,
No, the book related, the Rent Boy book had themes of sexual sadism.
right. So the
So,
concern is, as I understand it, the concern is one book that she read, one book in 11 years, one book,
okay,
it had some themes of sexual sadism.
okay,
That's a concern, right?
yes,
And then there's another concern that someone named Jeffrey Pagel is sexually interested in her crime. That's another concern, right?
the concern is the combination of that.
Right.
And whether or not the treatment team has addressed that and what they think about it. The concern is a question of risk. It's not a determination of risk.
What is there to address about Jeffrey Pagel's sexual desire over a crime that happened? What can Morgan do about Jeffrey Pagel's problems? Other than cut off contact?
I do not believe Morgan has any responsibility to address Jeffrey Pagel's concerns.
Okay, so all the stuff he's posting on the internet about his own behavior, that has nothing to do with Morgan, right?
I don't agree with that because the content of what is posting does have to do with Morgan, but that he's posting is not Morgan's fault or responsibility.
Right. And what would be your role, ma'am, in Morgan's future when she goes to the group home? Do you play a role in her life, or would you play a role in her life?
I oversee the forensic specialists that work at the Department of Health Services that oversee the contract for conditional release, case management and supervision.
So when a person is, in other words,
Go ahead, sorry.
so when a person is released to a group home and they have their rules, if they violate the rules, then you oversee the treatment providers who would address that. Is that what you're saying?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So really, you would play no role in Ms. Geyser's life going forward. You wouldn't be involved in treatment or anything.
Very rarely would I be involved in any conditional release person's day-to-day life.
Did you ever ask Ms. Geyser to provide you with a list of books she's read over the last year?
No.
To see what topics you know? Did you ever reach out to this Pagel person to ask him any questions of her?
No.
And you did say before that the treatment team did know about him. You're aware of that, right?
They knew his name. They indicated they did not know about the visits or any other details.
Yeah, so the visits at the facility, right?
Do you have an answer?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
And between the time that the judge ordered, so you're a part of DHS, right?
Yes.
And so it was actually your job to make sure that a conditional release plan gets filed with the court for the judge to either approve or not approve, right?
Personally?
Yeah.
No.
You're not involved in the drafting of that report? Or
No,
that plan, I should say?
correct, no. I mean, yes, you are correct that I am not involved directly in the drafting of that plan.
And Morgan, between the time that judge ordered that plan to be drafted and now, she hasn't done anything violent, right?
No,
And neither to herself or others, right?
I think that's true. I believe Winnebago would have reported that.
Right, if she was doing something violent to
Right.
herself or others, you'd know about that.
I think so.
And before you put together, when Miss Nicolai was questioning you about exhibit 2 that you have in front of you, you are the one who wrote the conclusion section, was that your testimony?
Yes,
So starting with conclusion and recommendation, did you write all that?
I did.
And you say that Ms. Geyser only provided the information about the book when prompted, but that's because she was asked about it, right? The specific question was asked what she's read recently, and she brought up Rent Book. Is that right?
That refers to the.
Rent Boy.
Right, that refers to the detail of the detail of the content of the themes of Rent Boy. But Morgan did bring up the book name itself. That's how WCS knew to Google the contents of it.
Right. And you said in your conclusions that reading horror and murder-related books is not by itself necessarily a risk to the community.
Yes, I did write that.
And you feel that there wasn't full disclosure of the book, is that what, or the contents of the book, right?
Correct.
That's what that comes down to.
That's true. Sorry, can you repeat that question?
You're concerned that there was, in your opinion, a lack of full disclosure about
Oh, yes.
the contents of that book, right?
Yes,
There's no other book she's read that you're raising today as a red flag for the court, right?
correct.
That's the one.
That's an example, yeah.
Well, that's the only one you're aware of that's a concern. Right?
The concern is about, I'm talking about that specific book, so yes.
Okay. You mentioned that in your conclusions that living in the community through conditional release, there is inherently less structure and supervision when compared to a state mental facility, meaning she theoretically has more freedom to leave if she wanted to, right?
Exactly.
And Morgan hasn't tried to escape from Winnebago that you're aware of, right?
No,
And you say that group homes are not locked, typically not staffed by individuals who understand complex mental health problems, and even with GPS, could not guarantee prevention from absconding, right?
correct,
That's true for everybody. That's nothing unique to Morgan.
correct,
And that somebody could form a bad relationship that would exacerbate a risk, that's not unique to Morgan. That's anybody.
true.
And that's just something we have to deal with, isn't it? That's part of the nature of somebody going into conditional release, is that it is a gradual process to give that person more freedom, and there will be potentially more things that could happen, right?
That is true. The recommendation was to monitor social contact, social relationships from one of the independent evaluators. So so we monitor different things depending on individual needs and risks.
And treatment doesn't stop for a person once they're released from the Winnebago Institute.
No, it doesn't.
In fact, it might change because that person now has a different set of challenges that they have
Yes.
to confront, right?
Yep.
And so, part of the job of DHS is just making sure that as part of the contract, if you will, is to make sure that those treatment providers are in place and available to the released person, right?
Yes,
And treatment remains something that, if there's a concern about a book, for example, a rule can be put in place that a person not read a particular type of book, right?
a rule could be put in place, that's true.
And then if a person violates that rule, then, as you know, petition to revoke gets filed with the court, right?
Yes,
So if we,
well, possibly,
right, it doesn't have to result in revocation, you could choose to do some alternative approach.
if we found out about it, yes.
Right. So, and so the way you work through things is to establish rules, right? Rules get established for a person when they're released.
Yes,
And in this case, no rules have even been really, other than the ones that exist at Winnebago, there's really been no set of rules that's been provided to Morgan to say, here's what you can read and here's what you can't read, right?
I don't know that.
Well,
I have no idea actually of that.
well, you said before she's not here because she violated any rule. We've already established that, right?
Yes, that's true.
Meaning-
Because there's a standard set of rules.
Right, meaning there's no rule that prohibits her from reading Rent Boy, for
Right,
example.
yes,
There's no rule that prohibits any type of reading against her.
right, yes, correct.
She discloses what she's read as part of the release plan, and she gets served with revocation papers. Do I have that right?
Objection argumentative.
No, that's,
No, overruled. It's cross-examination.
right, that's what happened. She has no rule prohibiting her from reading any genre at all, right?
Correct,
She then reads Rent Boy, that's what sends her, and discloses it, right?
correct.
And then she's served with revocation paperwork and told she won't be released for 6 months. That's how it
The
was handled.
revocation is not based on rule violation,
Based on
safety concerns.
safety concerns over something she read that wasn't prohibited.
Yes,
Okay, that's all.
Any redirect?
You were asked a lot of questions just now about why the petition to revoke was filed. And those questions seem to suggest the only reason was because of one book that Ms. Geyser read. Is that true?
yes.
That's the only reason that this
Oh,
was
sorry.
filed?
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that the singular only reason that she said, I read this book, and so you said, I'm gonna file this petition?
Oh, no, no.
Okay. Is it fair to say that it's a much more complex analysis that was done before the determination to file this was made?
Yes,
The discussion that was had regarding this Mr. Pagel person, you agreed with defense counsel that he certainly seems to have some issues, right? And that they're not Ms. Geyser's problem.
that she shouldn't be punished for,
Right.
or responsible for dealing with his issues.
Right. But there's still a concern that the department has because this is a person that Ms. Geyser decided to have a relationship with for some period of time, right?
That's true, but I would say the crux of the concern is that her current treatment team was not aware of the extent of their relationship, the extent of the content of the post. It's that they might have been aware on some level that he exists, but they weren't aware of the detail, the same with the book. They weren't aware of the extent of the details of the book. And that without their perspective on what that looks like in terms of risk mitigation or treatment intervention, we had no choice other than to file a petition for revocation because we cannot write a treatment plan that addresses risks that we're not aware of, that we've asked about, and the treatment team said, well, we haven't addressed it because we were not made aware of this level of detail.
And when you talk about level of detail specifically with this Pagel person, did the detail include the fact that some of the content of correspondence Ms. Geyser sent to him?
Yes.
What specifically?
The postcard that indicated a desire to be intimate with him.
Was that information that the Winnebago treatment team had?
No.
Do you think that it's a distinction for the treatment team to be aware of someone's name versus to be aware of a fact like that?
Yes.
Why?
Details that around the specific details around the nature of their relationship could exacerbate risks to the community and I think it would be important for them to have explored that in order to indicate what current interventions are in place and how we might be able to address that in the community.
If, if the department became aware that there was someone out there in the world who seemed to be fixated on Ms. Geyser and was sending her things and wanted to come see her, but there was no evidence that she ever reciprocated any communication, would the department have filed revocation papers?
Probably not.
Again, there are some things inherent about this case that are going to be outside of Ms. Geyser's control, right?
Yes.
Are those aspects the reason that the department has filed the motion to revoke here?
This has been asked and answered numerous times about why they filed their petition.
No, overruled.
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
These aspects of things that are outside of Ms. Geyser's control, just based on the nature of this case, are those the reasons that the department has concerns about risk in this matter?
No.
Okay. Are the concerns about risk specific to Ms. Geyser's actions and behaviors?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Further cross.
You said a postcard that Miss Geyser wrote Pagel, where she expressed a desire to be intimate with him, right?
Yes.
One postcard, right?
You're asking, sorry, what is your question?
You're aware of one postcard, one time,
One postcard, yes.
where she wrote someone who had visited her and said she wanted to be intimate with him.
Yes.
She's an adult woman, right?
Yes.
Wanting to be intimate with someone is not a risk factor, ma'am.
Wanting to be intimate with someone who is sexually aroused by an index offense may be, and that is the question that I had to the treatment team.
And there's no evidence that when she wrote him that postcard saying she wanted to be intimate, that she was aware that he was aroused by the index offense. Agreed? There's no evidence of that. Agreed?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. And it was Miss Geyser who cut off contact with Jeffrey Pagel, not the other way around.
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
You can't write a treatment plan to control for risks we are unaware of. That's what you said?
Yes.
You can, if to be clear, you can put any, in theory, you can put any rule in place you want. If you want to prohibit Morgan from having contact with someone, that can be a specific rule that gets put into her plan, isn't it?
The treatment plan indicates treatment interventions and is distinct from the rules of supervision for conditional release.
Okay, but it's already, but,
But yes, we can
Right.
put any rule we want, I guess.
and,
It would be subject to review by the court, but yes.
right, because she doesn't get released until the judge reviews the plan, right?
Correct.
So, okay, so when you said treatment plan, you weren't talking about a conditional release plan. That's a separate thing.
The conditional release plan does not indicate the rules of conditional release supervision, but it indicates treatment interventions and also placement, location of placement and that kind of thing.
Got it. Those are all my questions.
Any further direct?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Have a good day.
you.
Thank you. Indicated that Ms. Groff was present.
She is here, yes.
Is any significance to her testifying?
I was not going to call Ms. Groff, no.
All right, all right. Any further witnesses at this stage?
There is, I'm just trying to find her name, I'm sorry.
You asked for someone to appear by
Yes,
Zoom.
Lisa Portman is on Zoom. She is appearing remotely with the permission of the court.
Are you calling her?
Yes, please.
So is Portman in the Zoom arena?
I believe she was.
Ms. Portman, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we've got to connect you up to Zoom so we can see you. That may be on your part to connect up the camera.
Sorry, I'm trying to turn on the camera and I'm not quite, it's not, oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh, there we are. Okay, good afternoon.
Hello.
So I can see you and I can hear you. Can you see and hear the court?
Yes, I can.
All right. Do you, Attorney Nicole, do you recognize Ms. Portman?
No, I
No.
don't.
All right. Well, we'll assume you are Ms. Portman then, true?
Yes.
Until further examination. I'm going to ask you to stand if you can. Raise your right hand. Our clerk's going to swear you in.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Thank you. Please be seated. And then state your full name and spell your last name.
Portman, Portmann.
And what's your first name?
Lisa,
All right, thank you. And where do you work?
I work at Winnebago Mental Health.
All right, and you're currently out of state, true?
I am.
And because you're out of state, the court authorized you could appear by Zoom today.
Thank you.
True? I mean, that's true, correct?
Yes.
All right, very good. Then I'll turn to Attorney Nicole.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Portman, do you work with Morgan Geyser at Winnebago?
Yes, I do.
And how, in what way?
I am assigned as an individual therapist to work with her.
Are you aware that the Department of Health Services has filed a petition to revoke conditional release in regard to Ms. Geyser?
I am.
Were you part of any of the conditional release plan meetings at all in regard to Ms. Geyser?
Just one.
Okay, would it have been the initial one with a bigger group involved?
Yes.
Okay. I have some questions specifically about pieces of information that I'm interested in knowing whether Ms. Geyser's treatment team was aware of that I would like to ask you about. The first involves a book. How much work in therapy was done regarding addressing Ms. Geyser's preferred reading material, if any?
Can I express that I have some concerns about disclosure?
Yeah, I was going to
for
raise.
therapy sessions.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to address that issue as well.
All right, so we should address it.
Right, I would think that there would have to be a release signed or some sort of waiver for, I think what she's concerned about is testifying to information in therapy that has not been subpoenaed by the state.
So she needs a release to do that.
They would need a release to have.
So what's your client's here, you're here, what's your client's position?
I need to speak with I didn't know they were calling the therapist, so I haven't even discussed that with Ms. Geyser. I would need to speak with Ms. Portman privately, and then I can come back and advise how we want to handle that.
All right, well, that's reasonable. We'll take a recess at this time for about 10 minutes. I think a recess is reasonable, and then we'll give you an opportunity to do so. Now, you'll have to, what we're going to do is we're going to, we have some options available. One is we could clear the courtroom, but for the security, and allow you to confer. We can also permit you to go into one of the visiting rooms, or we can have you stay there, take a break, you stay there.
I was just gonna step out and call Miss Portman on a cell phone. If she could give the number to Jessica, I could just call her by phone.
I thought you had to confer with your client.
Well, I need to speak with Miss Portman and Miss Geyser, so I guess with respect to Miss Geyser, I would only speak with her after I've had a chance to speak with the therapist. I don't know what she's going to testify to.
All right, that's reasonable. Do you, we have, that we'll have to, I assume then we're gonna have to we'll take a break, number one. Number two, Ms. Portman's gonna have to disconnect from Zoom. I'm assuming she only has one phone with her. And,
Yes.
and then, that contact can occur. There's no need to broadcast your phone number over the public airways, but you could text it to someone. Have you provided your phone number to Attorney Nicolai?
No.
Have you provided it to the court?
Yeah, I can respond to the email with my phone number that I was sent the subpoena.
Okay, so that would be to Attorney Nicolai? Yeah, let's do that. We'll take it, we'll take a break for about 10 minutes. Let's say 10 minutes, and we'll do our best.
And then Judge, if they're gonna converse it here, I'll just have everybody in the gallery go outside and close the doors.
How do you want to handle then your conversation with your client?
We'll just go right into private area and talk.
That's a jail area. There's no, like, actual rooms, those are just cells.
No, I thought there was a communication capability.
Yeah, she can go in that room and I can go in the other room.
Okay, yeah, we do that.
Yeah, so we'll do that.
All right, so we're going to take, let's be in recess to 4 o'clock.
All right. Put you in a room, we just chat.
Yes. Okay, court's in recess. May be seated. Thank you. We're back on the record in the Geyser case, same appearances and case number. We were reviewing the status of Ms. Portman's testimony. Let me ask Attorney Contin what the status of the situation is.
Yes, Judge, I don't know if you want to do a colloquy with Ms. Geyser, but she would orally give her release for Ms. Portman to speak about their therapy.
All right, Ms. Geyser, you understand that Ms. Portman, your contact with Ms. Portman is subject to rules that make it confidential.
Yes, sir.
So if she talks about it here in court, it's not only between Ms. Portman and me and you and the attorneys, but all the people in the courtroom hear it, and it's the proceedings are being can be broadcast, and it can be outstanding.
Yes, sir.
And so whatever is said will be out in the public domain, as they say. People will know about it. And sometimes confidential information you don't want out. It's between you and the doctor, you and the professional, you and Ms. Portman.
I give my permission, sir.
You do. You understand you could say no.
I do, sir.
And you talked to your attorney about that?
Yes, sir.
Satisfied with Attorney Cotton's advice?
Yes, sir.
Satisfied with him as your attorney?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, that's fine, thank you. I'll then authorize that I'm satisfied then, Ms. Portman, that Ms. Geyser has released you from any rules of confidentiality with regard to your testimony today. You can proceed. So we'll go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Portman, I'm just going to ask a few pretty specific questions. And to clarify, you would be considered part of Ms. Geyser's treatment team with Winnebago Mental Health Institution, right?
Yeah.
Okay. As part of the treatment team, were you aware that Ms. Geyser enjoyed reading material that had themes involving sexual sadism?
No.
Is that interest something that has ever been worked on in therapy with Ms. Geyser?
Not with me.
Okay. Was the treatment team aware that Ms. Geyser's interest in reading material that had themes of murder and organ selling on the black market was something that was occurring?
I can't speak to what the treatment team knew.
Okay. Did you know these things?
No.
Okay. So that was never addressing the affinity for these types of themed literature. It was not something that you've addressed with Ms. Geyser in therapy.
No.
So if the conditional release planning team wanted to try to mitigate risk in some way and come to you, you would have no insight in terms of treatment that's been done with Ms. Geyser about those topics.
Correct.
Okay. In terms of this individual, Jeffrey Pagels, were you aware of Ms. Geyser's relationship with him?
I've heard his name mentioned before in therapy.
Okay. Was information relayed to you that Ms. Geyser wanted to be sexually intimate with this person?
No.
Was information relayed to you that this person was sexually aroused by Ms. Geyser's index offense?
No.
Were you aware that Ms. Geyser was sending this individual letters or cards?
Yeah, I want to clarify, I did find out recently since the filing of the petition.
Okay.
But prior, yeah.
Okay, so in terms of in a therapeutic clinical setting, these are not things that would have been addressed between you and Ms. Geyser?
Correct.
Okay. What about, has there been work done between you and Ms. Geyser in terms of her affinity for violent or dark artwork?
Ms. Geyser has shared her artwork with me.
Okay, and are you aware that pieces of art that Ms. Geyser drew were sent to this person, Mr. Pagels?
I've since learned that some of her art was sent out.
Were you ever shown artwork that Ms. Geyser did that depicts a decapitated type figure with blood coming out of the neck area? Does that sound like something that you've ever seen?
No,
Does that type of style or material sound consistent with artwork you've seen that Ms. Geyser has shown you?
no,
Is Ms. Geyser's interest in creating that type of artwork something that you've worked on with her in therapy?
no.
One moment. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Ms. Portman.
Uh,
How long have you been Ms. Geyser's therapist?
about 1 year.
Okay, and you work inside Winnebago Mental Health Facility, right?
Yes, I do.
And you remember testifying at the conditional release hearing a couple of months ago, right?
Yes,
And as Ms. Geyser's therapist, it's your job to provide her with one-on-one and as well as group therapy. Is that correct?
yes,
And those are two different types of therapy. Group is with other individuals, and then one-on-one is more of a private experience, right?
yes.
And do you have any concerns as you sit here today over Morgan's behavior in therapy?
No,
Even now, as you sit here right now today, knowing everything you know, are you concerned at all about Morgan's attitude or behavior in therapy?
no,
What about just in general, speaking about Morgan as a person? Are you somehow now alarmed that there's risk factors now that you were unaware of? Is that how you feel?
no,
Okay. So as I understand it, the judge had ordered a conditional release plan to be put into place, right? You're aware of that after the last hearing?
yes,
And isn't it true that part of the therapy that you were working on then with Morgan was working with her on that transition to the community?
yes,
Because that's something that you wanted to have happen for her, right?
yes,
And in fact, as you sit here today, it's something that you still want to happen for her, right?
yes,
There's no new red flag that's so alarming to you as a therapist that you think you need more therapy with Morgan at Winnebago, right?
no,
So, and that's knowing this information. The state asked you about Morgan's reading themes. The book we're talking about, this Rent Boy book, you are now aware she read that book, right?
yes.
Has there ever been a rule of therapy or that she can't read certain material?
No,
Are you aware of is she subject to any such rules that she can't read a particular genre or a particular type of book at Winnebago?
No,
So there's no restrictions, right?
not that I'm aware of.
And you would agree that you and Morgan have a good relationship, at least you would see it that way, right?
Yes,
And now that is part of the therapy that every time she comes in to meet with you, Morgan talks about the last book she read in the last couple of days, or how do you guys handle her choice of reading material?
if she chooses to share what she's reading, she might share what she's interested in or what she's reading. I don't specifically ask about it.
You've gotten to know her very well over the last year, right?
Yes,
You know that Morgan is a very bright young woman, right?
yes,
And you know that she's very well read, isn't she?
yes,
You also know that at Winnebago, there's no internet access that she has, right?
correct.
So she's not on the internet, on Facebook or any other site, interacting with people who are posting stuff, as far as you know, right?
Yes,
And Miss Geyser is interested in all sorts of reading material, from historical fiction to current fiction to Catcher in the Rye and Van Gogh and all sorts of things. You're aware of that?
yes,
Because you guys have talked about that as part of your getting to know each other. One way to get to know someone as a therapist is ask them what they're interested in, right?
yes,
And that's a normal part of therapy, isn't it? That as a therapist, you try to develop a rapport with the person that you're treating.
yes,
So if somebody that you're treating is really interested in movies, you might want to know, you might talk to them about movies or things like that, right?
yes.
And have you ever felt like Morgan withholds information from you in this year that you've treated her? Do you feel like you have to pry information out of her in therapy, or would you describe her as somebody who discloses and reports what she does?
Yes, she's discloses and reports. She comes in ready to talk regularly.
And I think it's important to cover this topic, ma'am. After reading this book, Rent Boy, that has these concerning themes, or these gory themes, did you notice a regression in Morgan such that you were alarmed that perhaps she had read something disturbing and was now experiencing trauma in therapy, or no?
I have not seen any regression from her since I've been working with her. I don't know when she read the book.
Okay, so in the year you've been working with her, you've not noticed any regression based on anything she's read. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Now, a person named Jeff Pagel, who you said you were aware of because his name has been mentioned in therapy before, right?
yes,
This is not a current person that Miss Geyser is having contact with, as you understand it, right?
yes, correct.
His name came up as somebody that she didn't want to have contact with. That's what you recall, isn't it?
Yes,
And it was her bringing up Jeffrey Pagel to you, right?
yes,
That's how you learn about it in therapy, because Morgan, as the patient, is disclosing something that she's concerned about that she wishes to talk through with you, right?
yes,
And then you talk through it and figure out whether it's something that requires more discussion or more treatment, right?
correct.
And have you had ma'am, I don't know if you've had a chance, but have you had a chance to read the petition that was filed to revoke Miss Geyser's conditional release?
No, I haven't read it.
Okay. And is there anything as you sit here now that causes you to recommend to the court that she needs more institutional therapy?
I don't believe I can make that opinion. I don't, make an opinion on whether or not she's ready to leave or should stay longer.
Okay. Is there a new treatment plan that you think needs to be developed with her because she had some historical contact with Pagel, or because she read this Rent Boy literature?
No,
Nothing.
Correct.
That's all.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, I should say this is,
Redirect.
right, it's actually redirect, excuse me.
Ms. Portman, I think that you testified that really there was not a lot of discussion about Ms. Geyser's interest in terms of reading material during therapy, true?
Not a lot, just casual conversation about Van Gogh. We talked about Van Gogh quite a bit.
But Ms. Geyser never offered to you, you know, hey, I'm reading this book and right now the characters are selling human organs on the black market. That was not a casual discussion that you had, right?
Correct.
And you've now testified that that's not a concern, you don't believe that that's concerning, right?
Correct.
You're aware that historically, Ms. Geyser has been fixated on fictional characters, right?
Yes.
And the index offense was directly related to a fictional character named Slender Man. You're aware of that, right?
Yes.
And you're aware that in Ms. Geyser's history, she was also fixated on literary characters, right? From Harry Potter books.
Yes.
And you know that the index offense was, at least for a part of time, reportedly due to adherence of the wishes of those fictional people, right?
I'm not real clear on that remote past. I've really worked with her in the present time. I can speak better to what work she's done in the past year and where she's been at mentally in the past year.
But don't you think that someone with that history, it would be very, very important to monitor what types of fictional characters they are relating to and interested in?
I was more attuned to her mental status, her mental health, how she was presenting, whether she was delusional or psychotic or anxious. We coped with grief and family and relationships in her present environment in the past year.
And you testified that you, for the most part, felt like Ms. Geyser was an accurate reporter with you and appeared stable, right?
Yes.
You're also aware that at a point in time, Ms. Geyser reported that all of the symptomology surrounding her schizophrenia was things she had made up.
I'm sorry, this is so far beyond the scope at this point, Your Honor.
Well, it's beyond the scope of the cross to an extent, but yet we're going into detail on therapy and on contact with Ms. Geyser. So I'll overrule the objection. I think it's necessary to go forward. I find it's within the scope of cross.
Do you need me to restate the question, Ms. Portman?
Please.
You're aware that Ms. Geyser has reported that she feigned symptoms of schizophrenia and never suffered from a mental disease or defect at the time of the index offense.
We talked about that in therapy.
Do you think that it's possible that there's a risk underlying the stability that you see from Ms. Geyser in your therapy with her?
Do I think that there's a risk? Oh, can you restate that?
Sure. Now knowing that Ms. Geyser has an interest in the types of artwork that we've talked about, decapitated figures, and the type of fiction we've talked about, murder and sexual sadism. Do you have any concern that the presentation that you're seeing from Ms. Geyser in therapy is not accurately reflecting what's going on?
I don't. I saw somebody who was, who I interpreted as being very authentic and processing authentic emotion and thoughts and relating to her environment and bringing that into the therapy session and processing it. I saw, that's what I saw.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, Ms. Portman. That's all I have.
Any recross?
Yes, briefly. Is there a rule of therapy that she's supposed to bring up every one of the books that she reads and talk to you about it?
No.
Okay. And you've now had a chance to look into this, the book Rent Boy, and it's not something that raises any concerns to you as her treatment provider, right?
Right.
That's all.
Any further direct?
No, thank you.
Ms. Portman, what is your educational background?
I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have a master's degree in social work.
And how long have you been working at Winnebago?
15 years or 14 years. 15 years with the state.
So have you been you said you've been a part of Ms. Geyser's treatment team for the last year?
Yes.
Before that, were you involved in other treatment teams involving other individuals at Winnebago?
Yes. Yes.
How many other individuals have you been involved in as a treatment team member with?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds for 15 years. So.
All right, I have no other questions. Any questions to the witness based upon my questions from the state?
No, thank you.
Attorney Cotton, anything from you?
No.
All right, thank you. And then Ms. Portman, thanks for being here. I appreciate your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
How should we proceed at this point?
Judge, at this time, I don't have any other testimony or evidence on the state's burden for the petition, and I believe I've moved to the only exhibit I marked into evidence, Exhibit 1.
I think you did. We received State's Exhibit 1.
Those were court exhibits, you said, Judge.
Yeah, we have 2 courts exhibits. Are you moving those in?
I would move both reports in.
So I'll receive both, so ordered.
Yeah.
And then, do you want the exhibits, Attorney Cotton?
I was just going to grab them. Yeah.
I'll give them to you. How are you, then, the state's resting, how do you wish to proceed?
Call Dr. Ken Robbins. He's waiting on Zoom right now.
All right. Do you want these exhibits?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Judge.
Yeah. Excuse me?
I just let him in now.
All right. Dr. Robbins, you're appearing by Zoom. Can you see and hear the court? I cannot hear you, so you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can. I can see you and I can hear you. Can you see and hear the court?
I can.
All right, very good. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to stand if you can. Raise your right hand. Our clerk will swear you in.
Okay.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And you've testified previously in these hearings concerning Ms. Geyser?
I have.
Thank you. Then Attorney Cotton.
Judge, given your familiarity with this doctor, would you take judicial notice of his qualifications?
I will. I'll take judicial notice of the qualifications for Dr. Robbins as well as the other 2 doctors that are to appear if they appear today. So ordered.
Dr. Robbins, good afternoon. Thank you for appearing.
My pleasure.
You are in receipt of the amended or the petition for revocation of conditional release that was provided to you, right?
Correct.
After that was given, after that was given to you, did you take any action or take any steps?
I did. So I'm in California, so I couldn't go to Winnebago to see Morgan directly in person, but I did have a remote interview with Morgan, and then I spoke with Dr. Kayla Pope, the medical director of Winnebago.
And what if anything, did you talk to Kayla? You said Kayla Pope, Dr. Pope is the medical director of Winnebago?
Correct.
Why did you speak with her?
I wanted to know, because I was surprised that the report from Ms. Whitaker suggested that the staff who were working with Morgan weren't aware of what was going on with either the books or with this man who had been contacting her. And that wasn't my understanding, so I wanted to find out what the truth was. So I called Dr. Pope to get more information.
And what did you learn the truth was?
I'm sorry, that one didn't come through clearly.
What did you learn when you spoke with Dr. Pope?
Objection, hearsay.
So Dr.
Well,
Pope told me,
it is, if it's offered for the truth of the matter concerned, as I understand the question, so it is hearsay.
It's to show why he did the things he did, why he took the next steps and pursued the opinion that he ended up concluding.
Well, that's true, but then we don't receive it for the truth of the matter asserted. We receive it for what he heard and what he did in response to what he heard.
Right.
All right, I'll receive it on that basis.
And so thank you, Judge. So Dr. Robbins, you spoke with Dr. Pope, and what did you learn as you spoke with Dr. Pope?
Dr. Pope told me that the staff were well aware of the books that Morgan had read, including the specific book that Ms. Whitaker mentioned. I think it was, Rent Boy. I'm not sure I have that quite right, but something like that. And that they were well aware of this man, Mr. Pagel, who had visited Morgan. So they were aware of all of this and had discussed it, and were not uncomfortable. Did not feel like any of this put Morgan at increased risk of behaving violently.
Did you have an opportunity to speak with Morgan then?
I did.
Was it by Zoom or by phone?
It was by phone. I'm in a very rural part of California, and Zoom wasn't. I couldn't access Zoom.
And based on your discussions with Ms. Geyser, do you, in your knowledge of what she has read, do you have an opinion about her suitability for conditional release?
Yes, so I was aware of some of the books. I wasn't aware of this particular book, but after talking with Morgan and after doing some search myself about this book and speaking with Dr. Pope, it doesn't change my opinion about her suitability for conditional release.
Why not? Should the court be alarmed that she read a particularly gory book? Does that make her more susceptible to violence, for example?
So I went through, I was sent a list by Morgan and by you as well of the books that Morgan has read over the last year, and the vast majority are not violent books. She's, she reads a wide range, mostly of sort of classic literature. And when I myself looked up this book, Rent Boy, what it was described on the internet was that it was I wrote this down because I wasn't sure I'd remember it. It described it as a hysterical romp through the worlds of contemporary culture and crime. It doesn't advertise it as a particularly gory or particularly sexual. It describes it as a comic book, that it's focused on comedy. I don't mean comic book. And I guess I didn't find the description to be alarming. And when I spoke with Morgan, she was very clear that that's not what attracted her to this, not the sex, not the violence. She just found it an interesting discussion of culture and comedy. So no, I think she reads a wide range of books because she has a wide range of interests, and she has such limited access to entertainment that I can imagine she wants to experience a wide range of books and try to understand what's happening in the culture. So no, there was nothing about this that made it sound to me like Morgan is focusing on gore or violence, or that anything about what she's been doing would put her at increased risk for violence.
Thank you. When you read through the list of books that she's read over the last year, some of those books include, for example, she reads the Bible every day. Did you become aware of that?
I did.
And certainly there's violent themes even in the Bible, aren't there?
There are.
She's read the Catcher in the Rye, for example, right?
Correct.
Books about the Vietnam War and about Vincent van Gogh, memoirs about other people, right? So it's a whole wide array, as you said, of books. Isn't that true?
It is a wide array with all different topics, and certainly going through that list doesn't suggest that she's focusing on books about crime or violence.
As you used to be the medical director of the Mendota Mental Health Hospital, weren't you?
That's true.
Isn't it important that, and isn't Winnebago sort of the sister institution? We only have two institutions, Winnebago and Mendota, right?
That's correct.
And does an individual in the institution have any control over the books that people send into them? Do these institutions restrict books from coming in?
Well, to some extent they do. They look to see what the books are. They inspect what comes in to see if they believe it's suitable. So yes, they do play some role.
Okay, so it'd be fair to say anything that Morgan reads is something that came through, as far as you know, the proper channels to be sent into Winnebago, and she would read it inside the institution, right?
Objection, foundation for this witness to know that fact.
Sustained.
When you learned about the various books that she read and thought about the conclusions you had offered previously, do you have a different opinion today, or do you think that Ms. Geyser should continue to be released under conditional release?
My opinion hasn't changed. I continue to believe that Ms. Geyser should be released under conditional release.
And knowing what you know about her having contact in person in June of 2023 with Jeffrey Pagel, and some of the other information that was contained about him, does that change your opinion?
So I think Morgan is going to unfortunately have to deal with people who are attracted to her because of her criminal history. And I think this is one example, but I think she became aware that that's what he was doing, and she herself recognized that she should be shielded from meeting with someone who had that motivation, and she asked that something be done to prevent him from being able to see her back in June of 2024, and that has continued.
Was that an inappropriate way for Ms. Geyser to address it?
I think that was a perfect way for her to address it.
That's all. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Cross-examination.
Dr. Robbins, I guess I'm a little bit confused by something that you said in response to Attorney Cotton's question. Is Dr. Pope someone that would be considered to be part of Ms. Geyser's treatment team that sits in on her treatment?
So she has been. She was her psychiatrist for quite a long time, and she has continued. She oversees all the clinical care at the institution. So she apparently has sat in on some of the clinical team meetings.
And you indicated that when you spoke to her, that she indicated the information that was filed with the court was just all incorrect about what the treatment team knew.
What she told me was that so there was apparently a social worker who sat in on the interview that Ms. Whitaker had with Morgan, and Ms. Whitaker asked this particular social worker some questions about what the team knew, and that they had not anticipated that there was going to be this kind of give and take, and the social worker was a relatively new social worker and was not knowledgeable about what the team knew and didn't know, and so she had a hard time answering the questions.
And that's what you recall Dr. Pope telling you?
Yes.
Sir, Ms. Whitaker testified today, and she said that she never confirmed with anyone in Morgan's treatment team about these things. That was done by a DHS representative. Does that sound familiar at all?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess all I know is that whoever the representative spoke with, apparently, according to Dr. Pope at least, wasn't as knowledgeable as would have been ideal.
Well, the court also just heard from Ms. Geyser's therapist, who agreed with all of the lack of information that's cited in the report that was filed. She agreed that these are things that the treatment team was unaware of and that hadn't been worked on in treatment.
Yeah, I can only tell you what Dr. Pope told me.
You'd agree with me that it seems like we've got a lot of conflicting information right now for the court, though.
Yeah, that may be true. I don't know that.
Okay. You'd agree with me that historically, Ms. Geyser has had issues becoming fixated on fictional characters.
Yes, in the distant past, that was true.
And so fixated that it led to the index offense.
Yes, I believe that's true.
So don't you think it would be really, really important for someone who's trying to assess risk to the community to know all about what kind of fiction characters Ms. Geyser's interested in?
So believing that fictional characters are real is very different from wanting to know what books she's reading. Yes, I think it would be important to know if she thinks there are current fictional characters that are real, if that's true today. But I don't know that it's critical that they're aware of every book that she reads.
Do you think that the treatment team at Winnebago Mental Health should know that Ms. Geyser enjoys reading about the sale of human organs on the black market?
I'm sorry, that completely misstates the record. She read a book to say that to make it broad and to suggest to the doctor that she is interested broadly in the concept is far different than reading one book, Your Honor.
Well, this is cross-examination, so I'm going to overrule the objection.
Do you mind repeating that question?
Do you think it would be important for Ms. Geyser's treatment team at Winnebago Mental Health to know that she enjoys reading material with topics about trading human organs on the black market?
So certainly if that were true, I think it would be important for them to know. I don't see evidence that that's true.
Do you think it would be important for Ms. Geyser's treatment team at Winnebago to know that she enjoys reading materials surrounded on themes of murder?
I guess I'd say the same thing. If it were true, I would agree that that would be an important thing to be aware of, but I don't see evidence that that's true.
Have you ever seen evidence that Ms. Geyser enjoys creating artwork that is depicting decapitated figures?
I'm not aware that she enjoys artwork depicting decapitated figures.
Are you aware that Ms. Geyser created such artwork and sent it to someone outside of the facility?
So I am aware that she sent some gory pictures to the man that we talked about. Again, I don't know how much enjoyment she truly got from that. I think some of that was influenced by what he asked her to do.
Do you think it would be important for Ms. Geyser's treatment team to know that she's engaging in creating gory artwork?
I guess if that were a consistent thing and that's what she was focusing on, yes, I think that would be important to know about.
Are you aware that Ms. Geyser was creating dark themed artwork around the time of the index offense?
I am aware of that.
Do the similarities in these themes not cause you any pause?
If I believed that she was in a similar emotional state, if I believed she got similar reinforcement by doing it, yes, I would be concerned. I don't believe that to be the case, however.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Any further direct?
Yes. Why don't you believe that to be the case?
Based on both talking to Dr. Pope and talking to Morgan herself, she was very clear that she doesn't take pleasure in gore or in violence, that she's trying to experience a full range of what's going on in the universe, and including what's going on in culture. And certainly there's a lot of violence in our culture, and I think that's part of what she's trying to understand and make sense of. But do I think that she takes particular pleasure in violence or in gore? No, I don't see evidence to suggest that.
And you've studied hundreds, if not thousands, of pages of historical records in this case, right?
I have.
And in fact, one thing you examined and read is Dr. Lundbaum's report that she authored in support of conditional release. Do you remember that?
I do.
And in fact, Morgan's artwork was specifically mentioned in that report, wasn't it?
It was.
The fact that Morgan even said, I use my art as a way not to self-harm. I put everything bad in me out in my art and writing so I don't do that. It's a way to cope with my trauma. You remember reading that?
I do.
That's a healthy thing, isn't that?
I think it's a healthy thing. I think Morgan has had very limited ways of expressing herself, of experiencing culture for the last 11 years while she's been institutionalized. And I guess I'm not surprised that part of what she has done is read books about crime and culture and drawn artwork involving crime, culture, and violence. I don't think that suggests that she's about to become violent.
Right. The state introduced, just so you know, Dr. Robbins, today, the state introduced one photo, one drawing that Morgan did of some sort. Can we show this exhibit to the witness, Your Honor? Exhibit 1. Okay. She drew one drawing with what appears to be not even a person, but some sort of thing with its head cut off, okay? One drawing they've introduced. Does that give you any cause for alarm that she did one drawing like that?
It does not.
And when Ms. Geyser, and this is something you've known, even before you authored your original conditional release report, you knew about her artwork, didn't you?
I did.
to me 2 minutes before I walked outside that said she wasn't coming.
She's not.
And I was like, because I was like, oh, thanks for.
Do you want to use a stick or a lav?
Stick is fine.
Okay.